Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, January 16th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game is in 228 days. The game against Michigan in 319 days. Talked to Kevin Noon on yesterday's show about some of the positive trends for Ohio State in the transfer portal in terms of NFL draft declarations or draft returnees, and also some coaching staff changes that have Ohio State fans maybe a little more optimistic about the 2024 season. Today we're going to talk about recruiting, and there's a lot of positive news on that front as well for the Buckeyes. Already this month, the Buckeyes have added five-star cornerback Devin Sanchez to the class of 2025. Also, 2025 defensive lineman Zahir Mathis. And there could be some more good news on the way for the Buckeyes relatively soon. We're going to bring in our buddy Marc Givler of BuckeyeHuddle.com to talk about some of that stuff. And Marc, I guess let's start with the first 2024 or potentially the final 2024 piece of the puzzle for the Buckeyes. That is defensive lineman Dominic Kirks. Talked about him a little bit on yesterday's show, but officially got his offer from Ohio State, and it sort of feels like everyone is sort of waiting for some potential news on that front.
Yeah, I think the sooner the better right now for Ohio State. There's two small things right now that could maybe be minor speed bumps toward Ohio State ultimately landing Dominic, and that is obviously USC is a school that has been working very hard on him. Much in tandem with Ohio State, kind of keeping him from signing there in the early signing period when he was committed to Washington. They're hoping to maybe get a visit here by before the end of the cycle. I think Ohio State's hoping that doesn't happen and to kind of get this thing locked up this week. And then you have kind of the unknown with Alabama. Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington to go to Alabama. That prompted Dominic Kirks' decommitment on Friday night, and so. Is there enough time for Alabama to, maybe get him on campus, get the offer to him, get all that set up? That seems a little unlikely, but it's just something to watch. Otherwise, the visit went very well this weekend. Ohio State did offer, as you said, and everything has played out this month the way we said it would need to play out in terms of, okay, they got to bring him in on the visit. And if they bring him in on the visit, that means Ohio State's serious. And if they bring him on a visit, they're probably going to offer him. So, and if he comes for the visit and he gets the offer, they're probably not going to give him the offer without being pretty sure they're going to get him. So, like all these things that we talked about before this all kicked off have happened. So everything's looking very good here. But there's just a couple of things they got to get out of the way here to avoid any last minute trouble.
The only other potential complication there, I guess, at least theoretically, is that at Washington, which is where he was committed before, they do have a new football coach. It is Jedd Fisch, late of the Arizona Wildcats. Obviously, I assume he has made his official visit to Washington. He is probably not going to get back on a plane and fly across the country to go see Jedd Fisch in Seattle. So I assume that's more of a theoretical concern than a real one.
Yeah, I would be if we're going to do the theoretical stuff, I think it would be Alabama. That might be the concern. Just, he committed to DeBoer. Alabama's obviously a great program, national powerhouse. I don't know that the relationships would be there with Jedd Fisch. I don't think he committed to Washington necessarily because he loved, Seattle so much as it was a really good program on the rise with a really good head coach. So I think all the things that kind of drew him to Washington are probably out of play at this point, and it's more of, can USC throw a Hail Mary here at the end, or could Alabama maybe cloudy things up a little bit?
All right, and now moving on to the class of 2025. Mentioned earlier, the Buckeyes got a couple of 2025 commits already this month. Devin Sanchez, the five-star corner out of Texas. He is the number 2 corner in the 247 composite for the class of 2025. The number 4 corner in the class of 2025 in that 247 composite is Dorian Brew. He is listed as being in Texas right now, but he was in Ohio until very recently. He has an announcement coming soon. Marc, as I think back at Ohio State corner classes in the past, they've had some really good ones. I always think about Jeff Okudah and Sean Wade coming in as the number 1 and number 2 corners in the class of 2019, right? I think I did my math right. So is Ohio State, is Tim Walton about to do it again? Is he about to add another top 5 corner to his 2025 class?
Yeah, that was 2017. That was Okudah, Wade, and of course Chase Young was in there as well. Yeah, we're old. It's not 5 years ago. It's 7 years ago now. So yes, short answer, yes. I believe they're going to land Dorian Brew. He announces January 24th. Longer answer. I think a lot of people were a little worried when he moved to Texas. Not so much that he was moving to Texas for recruiting purposes, but just, instead of being an hour down the road, now he's a fairly long flight away. And but right before he left for Texas, he visited Ohio State for a game, and then got on a plane and went to Texas like a day or two later. And he also came back to Ohio State since he was in Texas. And one thing we point out when we're talking about Devin Sanchez is when Dorian moved to Texas, moved to Conroe, he's about 30 minutes away from where Devin Sanchez lives. And Devin didn't have a game the night Dorian Brew played his first game at Conroe. So Devin went to watch Dorian Brew. So those two have had a connection. I think they were at camp the same day. They've just been a little bit of back and forth there for a while, but since Dorian moved to Texas, they've really kind of struck up a friendship, and Devin Sanchez has obviously started recruiting him very hard. And so the timing is phenomenal for Ohio State. The real question only is Dorian going to be a corner at Ohio State? My guess is he'll be a safety, but he could also be a big corner with his track speed. So either way, with Devin Sanchez, Blake Woodby already in the fold, and now possibly Dorian Brew, you are looking at an absolute monster defensive back class with a lot of potential here.
Yeah, and I mentioned Sanchez number 2, Brew listed as the number 4 corner in the class, would be the third, who could be the third commit, already the second commit in the class. He's listed as the number 10 corner in the class. At what point, Mark, do we start having the Tim Walton is the Brian Hartline on the defensive side of the ball conversation? Because it feels like it maybe is imminent if it shouldn't be already happening already.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the point of let's see who they sign in December, 11 months from now. Because if he hangs on to these guys, if he gets Dorian Brew, if he gets Trey McNutt, and then they'll add at least one other guy to that mix, and he keeps Devin Sanchez and Blake Woodby in the fold, that's going to be the best secondary class in the country. I don't think that anyone else is going to be able to combat that. I don't think anybody else will be able to top that. And so now you're putting together a body of work, and you don't want to give him. You want to give him full credit for last year, but there were also Ohio guys, so he's got to go out, and he's done it before. He's picked up some out of state guys, Calvin Simpson Hunt, but he's had a lot of Ohio guys, so he's had a nice little run here in Ohio. But you start talking about getting Devin Sanchez and Blake Woodby, and then you keep Dorian Brew after he moves to Texas, and maybe you add another big name there. He's had Naheem Offord from Birmingham, Alabama, 5-star corner on campus last week. I'm not super optimistic about that, but you never know. He came up and visited on his own dime. You start to do these types of things where, like Brian Hartline's doing when he goes and gets a 5-star kid from Florida or a 5-star kid from Texas or something like that. And then you start to have these discussions on is he the Brian Hartline of the defense? Is he as good as Brian Hartline? Is he the best recruiter on the staff? We can start having those comparisons once he signs guys like Devin Sanchez.
Yeah, boy, you bring that class together, you bring in a Trey McNutt, you add maybe one more piece, and maybe a year from now we're having is Brian Hartline the Tim Walton of the offense kind of conversation. That would be quite a class at a spot where, boy, you don't have to go back that long to think about a time when the cornerback room was a little bit of a disaster for Ohio State in the recruiting realm. Definitely not a concern anymore. Another spot that has been a little bit iffy in recent years where they might be about to add another potentially very impactful piece, the offensive line room. That has obviously been an area of great consternation for Ohio State fans over the previous few weeks and months and years. Carter Lowe, 2025 offensive tackle out of the Toledo area. He is also potentially has a commitment coming relatively soon. There are a lot of big programs in the Midwest interested in Carter Lowe. How's Ohio State looking on that front?
I think they're looking very good. I've had them in the lead for a long time now. This has kind of been an Ohio State-Michigan battle. Yes, there are other schools involved. I think Georgia, Alabama, there's Clemson, I think. Out-of-state schools. He's got a national offer list at this point, but this has primarily looked like an Ohio State-Michigan battle. And I've always kind of felt Ohio State had the edge there with Michigan, kind of nipping at their heels, but just felt like, maybe a couple months ago, things really shifted even further toward Ohio State. And so I think that's going to be a pickup that Ohio State's able to make. Does not have a set date in the way Dorian Brew does, at least not yet. By the time this runs, who knows? But it's looking like it's going to happen by the end of the month. So it's just kind of a matter of him, I think, ironing out the details of how he wants to make his decision and his announcement. But very much like where Ohio State stands, I think, is he going to be the best player Ohio State signs in 2025? Probably not. I mean, Devin Sanchez is obviously tremendous. There are on some other guys that are big time too. But just given his ability, in my opinion, a guy should be like a top 50 to 60 national guy on top of his position, which is offensive tackle, which has been, again, a bit of an issue for Ohio State over the last few years. To me, this was the most important guy in the cycle for them. You can't miss on this one. You're the in-state program. Your depth chart is wide open. You need this. And so I think they're going to get this done. It's going to be a huge get for Justin Fry if they can pull it off. But that's what it's looking like today. And again, a tremendous player. He's one of my top couple guys in the state of Ohio for the class. And again, should be a top 100 guy nationally, pretty much across the board, I think. So again, it's hard to overstate this one if they can pull it off. It's a huge commitment if they can land it.
All right. Well, we will keep an eye on that one. There's going to be a lot to follow on the recruiting front in the coming weeks. A lot to follow potentially in the transfer portal in the coming weeks. A lot to follow on the coaching front. Potential changes coming there. Some names we've been bantering about on the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com, presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. Lots of names to know on the potential offensive coordinator front, and then what changes will come after that change comes. Recruiting, transfer portal, spring football. Man, oh man, there's a lot going on right now, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We would love to have you join us there, be a part of that community, get some insider access for the team coverage that Kevin and Tony and I do. Mark, obviously, covering recruiting. He seems like he's cranking out multiple columns every week at this point because there's just so much to talk about and a lot of interesting information floating in on class of 2024, class of 2025, some transfer portal stuff. Saw some stuff even on some early 2026 offensive linemen to know. That all was all out there this week on the insider board, the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And also make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you hit that bell because recruiting announcements coming means breaking news podcasts coming. Sometimes we hop on there live and do it. Sometimes we have something recorded for you, some sort of immediate breakdown for just so you can know what's going on and know what it means. So you're going to want to be subscribed to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.